Good morning. Welcome to worship this beautiful day in August. So glad to see all of you. We had a packed church yesterday for the wedding of Lauren and Chris Konachek, and it was a blessed day, and everything went very, very well. And that is kind of the theme for today. As you see, the question for the day is, how do we keep God at the center of our committed relationships? So that's our question. It just so happens that my husband picked up a recipe card that was in our bedroom. I don't know why there was a recipe card in our bedroom, but it was there. And it was written by his mother. And it had a little Pennsylvania Dutch little thingy deal at the top. You know how recipe cards have that little adornment. And it said, "Kisses don't last, cooking does." Oh, I haven't put that in my sermon yet. And then my husband said, "Well, that's just wrong." And I agree. Pennsylvania Dutch, I don't know. You know, there are about 100 things that I love about Redeemer Lutheran Church and this congregation, and here's one more. The person who wrote this question for today wrote, "In a marriage," and then in parentheses, "or other committed relationship." I thought how thoughtful that is. How thoughtful to think not only of her own or his own context, which was probably a marriage relationship, but to think that there are many others in this church who may not be in a marriage relationship, but certainly are in a committed relationship of some other sort. So it could be siblings who have lived under the same roof for decades, or same-gendered friends who are committed to sharing their lives and maybe their homes together. Any relationship of choice where one does not abandon another, and that sometimes we need to forsake some people in order to be faithful to that relationship. It is a relationship marked by care, a lot of care, one for the other. And today I want to talk about healthy relationships of equals, not abusive relationships for today. I don't want to do a lot of defining here, because if you are in a committed relationship, you know it. Right? If you are seeking a committed relationship, you know that too. And if you are not seeking a committed relationship, you're not in the dark about that either. Our first reading today is used at tons of weddings. Anybody out there, did you have Ruth read at your wedding? Not in this group. Okay. Usually between a man and a woman, like yesterday when Lauren and Chris were married, right there. And yet those words are actually, as you saw today, about a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law. And Ruth is saying to her mother-in-law, "Even though I have no obligation to you anymore because our husbands have died, I'm staying with you. I am committed to you, and I will not go away. Wherever you go, I'm going to be there. And where you lay your head, I'm going to do the same." The second reading from Ecclesiastes is also popular at weddings. And it has that surprise ending. That's what I like about it. It goes along talking about one person, and then talking about two people, and then all of a sudden at the end, we've got a three-stranded cord. And the third strand, of course, is God, making that bond stronger still. And all of that is well and good when these verses are read at ceremonies. But to the question, how do we keep God at the center of our committed relationships? Perhaps we want answers that go beyond the day of the ceremony. So here are several ideas. You could pray for your partner every day. You can pray with your partner. You can text your partner a Bible verse every day. You could volunteer together. You could attend church together. You can discuss how you will use your financial resources, your gifts from God together. You can hang a cross or other religious symbols in your home, maybe throughout the whole house. You can sing religious songs together. Like my husband and I would sing and play hymns together on a Saturday night. That's just who we are. You can talk to your pastor before things get so terrible that it's hard to turn the train around. Talk with your pastor. You could get matching tattoos of the Trinity on your backsides. So all of these are great ideas. Okay, some are better than others. And almost any, of them might be great ideas and great things for your relationship. But they miss the point entirely. How do we keep God at the center of our committed relationships? We don't. Because God is already there. God is always there. And it is up to us, the realm that is our choice, to notice God's presence and respond to it. So this is not a do your sit-ups faith. This is the Lutheran twist that you're going to hear all the time. It's not anything that we can do to get from God love or support or encouragement or acceptance or forgiveness. That's already there. It's our choice to notice God's presence working in our life and to respond to it with our very lives. I spoke with a disciple at Redeemer recently who said, at Redeemer, this is the first time that I've been introduced to God in such a way that I didn't feel worse about myself. And now I'm free. I feel free in the love of God. And I said, yes, but do you notice that now your life is full of service? You're here all the time with the noon run meal and so on. And she said, yes, but I'm happy, and I do it from my choice. And I do it because it feels right. My grandfather was a railroad man. Actually, both of my grandfathers were railroad men. They were both also preachers' sons. How about that? Grandpa Bates was tall and he was lanky, and the people of his tiny town in Minnesota, Staples, Minnesota, remarked on how fast he could get from one place to another, because he could walk so fast. But there was one time when he walked slow, really slow. And that was any time he was walking with my grandma. My grandma was probably 5 feet at her tallest. And when she was a child, she was hit with rheumatic fever. And that fever took the lives of 2 of her siblings. But she lived, but she was always told, take it easy. Don't ever strain your heart. You are delicate. So when my grandpa, tall guy, would walk with my grandma, short lady, they would walk really, really slow. And here is the love of God in this very, very simple thing. God was there in one partner, noticing a weakness in the other and walking alongside nevertheless. God was there in accepting what could not be changed and loving without question. God was there in the midst of that commitment with unconditional love, the same kind of love that we experience with God. And God works through people. And God works through people who are connected to one another. So God at the center is often God at the center of one's heart. Your heart or your partner's heart, reaching out and loving in a godly way. A relationship that's marked by care. I didn't find out this thing about my grandparents walking so slow throughout Staples, Minnesota, until the funeral of my grandma. The town is so small, the word townspeople really makes sense. So this was a townsperson who told this story of watching my grandparents walk through town. And the interesting thing about it is that my grandmother outlived my grandfather by 15 years. So who was the delicate one? We don't know, and so we care day by day. Committed relationships are built on a rock and not on shifting sand. So from the gospel today, that metaphor of the man who is building a house, and what will the foundation for that house be? In the book of Luke, that rock that's being talked about is everything that Jesus has said before. And you know what comes before? The Sermon on the Mount, the entire thing. That is the rock on which we are to build our house, our relationships, our lives. And in that sermon by Jesus, a lot of difficult stuff, like love your enemies, like do not worry about your life. Wow, that's a tough one. Do not worry about your life. And blessed are the meek. A relationship that is built on that rock is really a partnership of disciples. And if the partnership flourishes to involve children, then you've got a family of disciples. You know, to be honest, it's really hard to mine the scriptures, especially the Old Testament, for a clear picture of God's ideal marriage. I'm kind of grateful that it's not there. Jesus himself spoke at length about divorce, a reality then as it is now. But it isn't hard at all to get a direction when it comes to being disciples. On that, we've got a lot to go on. Following Christ's teaching as a team means that the world can be doubly blessed. And there's something more tender when we begin to notice God at the center of our committed relationships and respond with the way that we treat each other. When we notice how God's grace saves our bacon when we don't deserve it, perhaps we respond with a little more grace when our partner forgets to take out the trash, or laughs too loud, or leaves damp towels on the floor. When we notice how God's creative genius shows up in so many different ways throughout creation, we may respond by being surprised once again at how fearfully and wonderfully made we find our partner. When we notice how God forgives every last mess up of ours, perhaps we respond with a way to forgive our partner's mess ups. My grandpa knew well the story of Jesus' sacrifice, and apparently he thought it was an unquestioned good to give up speed in order to walk hand in hand with my grandma. When we feel thankful for our partner, we know in our hearts that he or she is a gift straight from God. And we are so glad that God put that person in our path. Keep God at the center of our committed relationships. God's already there, always there, no matter what and no matter what happened or what will happen. And in every bit of our lives, our free choice is to notice and respond. Notice and respond. Amen.